What scene from a TV show will you never forget? Sideshow Bob stepping on rakes for what felt like a solid 5 minutes. If there was one joke I could erase from my memory and experience again for the first time, that would be it. Ah, rakes my old enemy. But I thought I was your arch enemy? I have a life outside of you. But apparently they only did that scene because they needed to pad out the episode for time. 100% worth it. Oh, that German for the Bart. Nobody who speaks German could be an evil man. Pretty much the entire episode the body from Buffy is seared into my brain. It's such a raw, poignant depiction of the immediate hours following a loss. Once more with feeling. I think I was in heaven. The last scene of Blackadder goes forth. For those that don't know it, it's a comedy based in the trenches of the First World War. They go over the top in slow-mo. Then you see the flashes of the battlefield. Then it cuts to the same field in modern day, peaceful and covered in red poppies. It makes me tear up every time. On Roseanne when it's discovered that Aunt Jackie's boyfriend has been beating her. Her reaction of shame and tears is so heartbreaking. I choke up every time I see it. Actress Laurie Metcalf won 3 Emmys for her role and earned every piece of them. I love it when Dan finds out, slyly grabs his jacket and slinks out the door. I get chills. I get chills every single time, even though I've seen this episode about 30 times from childhood to adulthood. I always cry. Love Dan so much. Edited to add. It shows even more of Dan's great character when the police show up to arrest him and Roseanne tries to explain what happened. And Dan simply tells her it's about him and no one else, protecting Jackie's privacy from her fellow officers. This is a defining moment for Dan. Dan and Jackie don't get along often, because she is annoying and neurotic to Dan's calm and cool demeanor. It is one of the moments where Dan puts family over his own personal displeasure. Even people you don't like shouldn't be hit. It's subtle and extremely telling all at once. He's not the kind of character that needs to run his mouth about kicking someone's ass, he just does it. And Roseanne is just not stopping it. Like they both know what's going to happen. They've been married for so long, they kinda just give a little glance and she sorta helps him out the door. For years they've been arguing passionately about what a pain in the ass Jackie is for Dan and it's a constant bug on his side she's always over at the house but, like not beat her pain in the ass. Sons of Anarchy, OP, the prison scene. When Brendan Fraser guest starred on Scrubs, the scene when you realize they are at his funeral. Totally didn't expect to get so choked up from a show like that. Scrubs has so many scenes like that. It is amazing that this show is often so overlooked. Mum. Buffy's mum dies. Mommy and I broke. When Douglas bursts into the church yelling father in the crowd. I'll never forget the I'm disabled scene. For me it was Moss taking her drink order. To be fair, that whole episode was pure gold. When Dexter goes home at the end of season 4 and finds Harrison. That was the definitive end of the show. The rest was fanfiction. The end of Gus Fring. The slow zoom in on Lily of the Valley. My folks just finished watching Breaking Bad for the first time, so I've been reliving some of my favorite moments from the series as well. The 2-minute prison riot scene, the final fates of Mike and Hank, and the scene where Walt runs the drug dealers over with his car and shoots one of them to save Jesse, then looks at Jesse and simply says run, are some of my absolute favorites. Mine was the fight scene between Walt and Skylar in Ozymandias. Best episode of television. Period. Walt screams, "What the hell is wrong with you? We're a family." Then takes in the scene of Flynn protecting Skylar from him. His wife and son obviously horrified of him. Then Skylar screams when he takes the baby. So intense. In Scrubs when Dr. Cox realizes what killed the patient that he harvested all those organs from and has to watch helpless as they all flatline. I've always wondered if these things happen in real life. Like, doesn't the deceased donor have to be tested for compatibility? What are the chances that one hospital would have the exact donor recipient matches for multiple people? Doesn't make the moment any less moving, though. It's based on a true story, but in reality they were in all separate hospitals on different days if I recall correctly. The show just put them all in the same room for convenience's sake. In the show, the patient had rabies which they wouldn't have caught on a compatibility test because of how rare it is. I don't know how long it would take to do a compatibility test. I just remember reading about people on the transplant list carrying Pegas around because it could go off on a moment's notice. JD even mentions that testing for such a rare disease as rabies would have been irresponsible because of how long it takes, and the patients who had died only had a week or two to live. Which is a good point and nearly pulls Dr. Cox out of it. But then they both get beeped, because Dr. Cox had also decided to give one of the organs to a relatively healthy patient who could have waited. And he's just flatlined. McGinley sells that moment so well, it's heartbreaking. I can't not hear the phrase how to save a life and not think of Perry losing his shoot on that last patient as he's coding. The scene in Game of Thrones when Ned Stark is killed. I didn't read the books and really didn't think it would happen right up until it did. This story is not fricking around. A lot of people nowadays, and surely for many years on, will poke endless fun and mockery at the mostly shoot pile that was season 8. What they might forget is that, even amid the final season, Game of Thrones was a seemingly once-in-a-generation media powerhouse which had staked its name in TV drama history. The sheer amount of backlash and media coverage around season 8 didn't stem from a lack of prior prestige, mind you. I find it absolutely fascinating that one bad season ending to got essentially wiped out its fanbase and any reason to watch the show again from the beginning because of that. It's unfortunate, but the story is designed around building up these characters and stories for big payoffs. The Red Wedding was the result of multiple different small and big things coming together, for instance, and then going on to cause a major ripple effect on everything around it afterwards, with even more being set up, and everything from the White Walkers to Jon's parents and Cersei's madness was all building up to something. In other more contained shows it can be easier to enjoy the good seasons and skip the bad, like watching Dexter up until season 4 or skipping the gas leak season of Community or whatever. Got staked so much on building everything up to the endgame and tying things together with so much foreshadowing and interconnected plotlines, and it just ended with an incredibly rushed final season that couldn't even send home the most basic storyline expectations. Grunkle Stan, I trust you. On the less heavy and more wholesome side, when Phil and Lil from Rugrats are talking about the best gift they ever gave their mum, which was their first laughter, what stuck with me was that the scene showed the twins being breastfed. They called it being fed the old way, which was pretty bold of a 90s cartoon geared toward children. Okay, fine. The episode went on to break me when Chucky's dad reads him a letter from his deceased mum, after he spent the whole episode essentially looking for her. The note reminds Chucky of an early memory of being held by her and assured him that she's not on Earth anymore, but that she is with him. Made me tear up. Watcher sigh. I discovered the other day that a lot of teens don't realize what SNL was spoofing. Frey's dog waiting, in Futurama. The twist at the end of season 1 of The Good Place. You're basic. It's a human insult. It's devastating. You're devastated right now. Ted Danson's line delivery was on point through that entire series. The final episode of MASH, when Hawkeye remembers what happened on the bus. Game of Thrones, The Red Wedding. Friends, when Ross goes to spray tan. I will forever remember crying out loud the whole episode. Mine's the one where everybody finds out. I've watched that episode in excess of 100 times and I still laugh through the entire episode. Phoebe in particular, my eyes. The end with Ross trying to get his life back together by showing his boss that he had returned to normal only to seemingly start yelling at a random window about his sister is the best scene in the show. The memory of Helga having to go alone to preschool because her parents are too busy praising Olga. I've referenced it many times on here. Uncle Phil saying, I remember the first time I got stopped. Between this and how come he don't want me, man, it's clear that an awful lot of Fresh Prince went right over my head when I casually watched parts of it back in the 90s. When Cartman goes to Token's house and tells him to grab the bass guitar out of his basement, then later being able to play said bass guitar. Bass. Walt watching Jean die. I came to say the scene of the next morning when Jesse finds her. Everything about that whole thing is heartbreaking. Bryan Cranston and Aaron Paul deserve every word of praise they got for that show. Hell, the whole cast does. That Will and Uncle Phil scene from Fresh Prince. How come he don't want me, man? I cried at 14. I cried at 41. I cried every time I saw that scene. The scene in Doctor Who where Amy leaves the Doctor to go back in time to spend the rest of her life with Rory. And people say we don't talk about love and monsters. No, Angels Take Manhattan is the episode we don't freaking talk about. There was a scene in Dragon Tales where one of the character learns this trick to remember which side is left. Your left hand makes the correct L shape. I sometimes still use this method. Tyrion's trial scene in Game of Thrones. I've never had more goosebumps in my life than when I was watching that scene. When it comes to TV, at least. Tyrion. Guilty? Is that what you want to hear? Tywin. Do you confess killing the king? Tyrion. Of that I am innocent. I am guilty of a far more monstrous crime. I am guilty of being a dwarf. Tywin. You are not on trial for being a dwarf. Tyrion. Oh, but I am. I've been on trial for that my entire life. Tyrion. Turning towards the audience. I saved this city, and all your worthless leaves. I did not kill him. I did not kill Joffrey, but I wish that I had. Watching your vicious bastard die gave more relief than 1,000 lying whores. I wish I was the monster you think I am. I wish I had enough poison for the pack of you. I would gladly give my life to watch you all swallow it. Tywin. Tyrion. Tyrion. I know I'll get no justice here, so will let the gods decide my fate. I demand a trial by combat. Q Reigns of Castamere. From the top of my head.